The girl in the vines. The jungle was alive with strange sounds, a mix of buzzing insects, distant animal calls, and the soft rustle of leaves in the warm wind. Ethan moved slowly, brushing away thick green vines as he stepped forward. His boots sank into the damp earth, and every step felt like he was walking into another world. The air smelled of wet soil and sweet flowers, and glowing plants lit the path with a soft blue light. He was far from the human settlement, exploring a part of the alien jungle no one dared to enter. Ethan's scanner beeped once, a sharp sound that made him stop. He checked the small screen. Movement ahead, something alive and large. Carefully, he pushed through the hanging vines, trying not to make a sound. Then he heard it, a voice soft and musical, like a song carried on the wind. It was unlike any sound he had ever heard before. Curious and cautious, he moved closer. The vines parted, and his eyes widened. There, hanging between two massive tree trunks, was a young alien woman. She was tangled in thick green vines, her arms pulled above her head, her legs trapped. Her skin had a soft glow, like moonlight on water, and her eyes were large, shining with a pale golden light. Her hair, long and flowing, shimmered with shades of deep silver and violet. She looked at him with surprise, and then relief. She spoke quickly in a language he could not understand, her voice full of urgency. Ethan raised his hands, showing he meant no harm, and stepped closer. The vines were tight around her body, leaving faint marks on her skin. It looked like she had been trapped for hours, maybe longer. He took out his survival knife and began cutting the vines, one by one. The alien girl watched him closely, her breathing fast. When the last vine snapped, she dropped lightly to the ground, landing on bare feet. She stumbled, and Ethan caught her. For a moment, they just stared at each other. She touched his chest with her hand, curious about the strange material of his shirt. Then she smiled, a small, gentle smile that made the jungle around them feel less dangerous. But the moment of peace didn't last. A deep, low growl echoed through the trees. Ethan's instincts kicked in, and he turned toward the sound. From the shadows emerged a massive creature, its skin covered in dark scales, its eyes glowing red. It had 4 legs, each with sharp claws, and a mouth filled with teeth that could crush bone. The alien girl gasped and gripped his arm tightly. Ethan pulled her behind him, his hand going to the blaster on his belt. The beast stepped closer, its head low, growling louder. Ethan fired a warning shot into the ground, and the blast lit up the jungle for a second. The creature flinched but didn't back away. It let out a roar so loud the trees shook. Ethan knew they couldn't fight it. Not here, not without backup. "Run," he said firmly, pointing away from the creature. The alien girl nodded and grabbed his hand, pulling him toward a narrow, hidden path between the trees. They ran, dodging low branches and leaping over roots. The glowing plants blurred past them, and strange shadows moved in the corners of Ethan's vision. He could still hear the creature behind them, its heavy steps shaking the ground. The girl looked back and said something in her language, her voice full of fear. Ethan didn't understand the words, but he understood the meaning. They had to keep moving. The hidden path led them deeper into the jungle. The air grew thicker, and the sounds of wildlife grew louder. Somewhere far above, massive bird-like creatures screeched. Ethan's heart pounded, but he kept his focus on the girl leading him forward. There was something about her, not just her beauty, but the way she moved, as if she belonged to this wild place. She glanced back at him, her golden eyes meeting his, and for a moment he thought he saw trust there. Finally, they reached a small clearing surrounded by tall, glowing plants. The girl slowed down, breathing hard. She pointed ahead, through another wall of vines, as if telling him there was safety beyond. Ethan hesitated, his instincts warning him not to go deeper. But then he heard the sound again, the beast crashing through the jungle behind them. He had no choice. He nodded at her, and together they pushed through the vines, disappearing into the unknown. Cliffhanger. Behind them, The red eyes of the creature glowed faintly in the darkness. Watching, waiting, the hidden path. The vines closed behind them like a curtain, blocking the faint light of the clearing. Ethan blinked, adjusting to the dim glow of the strange plants that lined the path. They gave off a soft green light, pulsing slowly, as if breathing. The air was cooler here, but heavier, carrying the scent of damp moss and something metallic. Every step felt like walking into the heart of an ancient secret. The alien girl moved ahead of him, silent but quick. Her bare feet made no sound on the moss-covered ground. She glanced back now and then, as if making sure he was still there. Ethan noticed her shoulders were tense, and her golden eyes scanned the darkness like a hunter searching for danger. She was leading him somewhere, but he didn't know where. He only knew the beast's roars had faded into the distance, though the jungle still felt alive with unseen eyes. They passed under massive tree roots that arched overhead like natural tunnels. Strange glowing insects drifted through the air, their wings humming softly. Some hovered near the girl, as if drawn to her, their tiny lights reflecting in her silver-violet hair. Ethan kept his blaster ready, not trusting the calm too much. This place was beautiful, but it felt like the kind of beauty that could kill you if you weren't careful. After a while, the girl stopped at a wide tree whose bark shimmered faintly. She placed her hand on it, and a ripple of light spread across the trunk. Ethan stared, realizing this tree was no ordinary plant. It reacted to her touch. She looked at him, gestured for him to do the same. Hesitant, he placed his palm against the bark. A warm vibration moved through his hand, and for a brief moment, images flashed in his mind. Green skies, crystal rivers, and alien cities hidden under giant canopies. Then the sensation faded, leaving him breathing hard. What was that? He muttered, but she only tilted her head, not understanding his words. They continued forward, and Ethan began to notice faint carvings on the stones along the path. They were symbols, circles, spirals, and lines that seemed to tell a story. He guessed they were ancient markings, maybe from her people. The girl traced one with her fingers, her expression soft, almost sad. Ethan had the feeling this path was more than just a way to escape. It was sacred to her. As they walked, he noticed faint scars on her wrists. They looked like the marks left by metal cuffs. Someone had kept her prisoner. He didn't ask, but the thought made his chest tighten. She caught him looking and quickly pulled her hands into the folds of the vine-like fabric that hung loosely around her. Her guard was still up, but there was a spark of trust forming between them. The path grew narrower and the glowing plants became denser. The air shimmered faintly, like heat rising from stone. Ethan felt a strange pressure in his ears, and a low humming sound surrounded them. It wasn't coming from any one place. It was everywhere. The girl stopped suddenly, holding up her hand. From the shadows ahead, a faint metallic noise echoed. The sound of gears turning slowly. Ethan froze, recognizing it instantly. That wasn't an animal, it was technology. And in a jungle like this, that could only mean one thing. Someone was hunting them. The girl's eyes widened, and she whispered something urgent. He didn't understand the words, but the fear in her tone was enough. Ethan moved closer, lowering his voice. "We need to hide." She shook her head and instead pulled him toward a wall of hanging vines. Behind them was a narrow gap that led into a small cave hidden in the roots of a giant tree. Inside, it was dark except for the faint glow of tiny mushroom-like plants. They crouched together, and Ethan could hear her fast breathing. The metallic noise grew louder, mixed now with the faint clicking of alien boots on stone. Through the small opening in the vines, Ethan saw shadows moving, figures in dark armor, their faces hidden behind insect-like helmets. Each carried a long staff with a glowing tip. Scanning the jungle for signs of movement, Ethan's gut tightened. Bounty hunters. They stopped near the glowing tree where the girl had placed her hand earlier. One of them crouched, touching the bark, and the tree's light rippled again. A soft chime rang out, and Ethan's stomach dropped. They had found her trail. The girl reached for Ethan's arm. her fingers trembling, her golden eyes met his. And for the first time, he saw something beyond fear, desperation. These weren't just hunters after a prize. They wanted her back for a reason, and Ethan had the feeling it wasn't good. The hunters began moving in their direction, slow but certain. Ethan tightened his grip on the blaster, his mind racing for a way out. The girl leaned close and whispered. A single word. He didn't understand it, but her tone told him everything. It meant run. The jungle's secret, the glowing tip of the staff pushed through the vines, its light sweeping across the dark cave. Ethan held his breath, every muscle tense. The alien girl pressed closer to him, her hand gripping his sleeve tightly. Outside, the bounty hunter's helmet turned slowly, scanning the shadows. For a moment, Ethan thought they were caught. Then, from somewhere deep in the jungle, a strange sound echoed, a low, vibrating hum that seemed to shake the air itself. The hunter froze, looking toward the sound. The others in the group stopped too, their glowing weapons flickering as if something was interfering with them. The hum grew louder, and the ground beneath Ethan's boots trembled slightly. The girl's golden eyes widened, and she whispered something in a tone that was almost reverent. It sounded like a name, but Ethan couldn't understand it. The hunters exchanged quick signals and began moving away, their pace faster now. In less than a minute, the sound of their boots faded into the distance. Only the hum remained, pulsing through the roots and stones. The girl pulled gently at Ethan's arm, urging him to follow her out of the cave. They stepped back into the jungle, the air heavy with an energy he could almost feel on his skin. They moved deeper along the hidden path until they reached a place unlike anything he'd ever seen. The trees formed a perfect circle, their trunks thick and ancient. In the center was a pool of water that glowed with a silver-blue light. Above it, thin threads of light floated in the air, moving like ribbons in the wind. The girl stepped forward slowly, her bare feet making no sound on the moss. Ethan followed, staring in awe. He felt like they had stepped into the heart of the planet. The girl knelt beside the glowing pool, touching the water with her fingertips. Ripples spread out, and as they did, images began to form on the surface. Ethan saw flashes, tall alien structures hidden under trees, her people dancing under green skies, and then chains, cages, and hunters dragging her away. The vision faded, leaving the pool calm again. The girl turned to him, her expression a mix of sadness and determination. She touched her chest and then pointed toward the pool, as if telling him this place was connected to her. Ethan crouched beside her, looking at the water. He didn't know how, but he could sense that this pool was important, sacred, maybe even powerful. It might be the reason the hunters wanted her. She was tied to it, and if they took her, they might control whatever magic or energy it held. Suddenly, the hum in the air changed, becoming sharper, almost like a warning. The threads of light above the pool began to twist and spiral faster. The girl stood quickly, pulling Ethan back. From the shadows beyond the circle of trees, shapes began to emerge. Tall, thin figures with glowing blue eyes, their bodies covered in armor made of living vines. They moved silently, but their presence was overwhelming. Ethan's first instinct was to reach for his blaster. But the girl shook her head firmly. She stepped forward, placing her hand over her heart and bowing her head. The vine-armored figures stopped at the edge of the circle. Watching her, one of them stepped closer, speaking in the same language the girl had used before. His voice was deep, like the rumble of distant thunder. The girl answered, her tone urgent, and pointed in the direction the hunters had gone. The armored figure turned to look at Ethan, his glowing eyes unreadable. For a tense moment, no one moved. Then the figure nodded once and gestured for them to follow. Ethan hesitated, but the girl took his hand and led him forward. They walked together into the deeper jungle, the vine-armored warriors surrounding them. The air grew cooler, and Ethan noticed that the plants here seemed to move slightly as they passed, opening to let light shine through. It was like the jungle itself was alive and aware of them. Finally, they reached another clearing, this one filled with massive stone pillars covered in glowing carvings. In the center was an ancient structure made of the same stone, its entrance covered in moss and flowers. The warriors stopped, and the girl stepped inside, pulling Ethan with her. Inside, the walls shimmered with streams of light flowing like water. At the far end of the chamber was a tall crystal that pulsed with the same energy he had felt in the pool. The girl placed her hand on it, and for a moment, the entire room lit up. Ethan felt a rush of warmth and clarity. In his mind, he heard her voice, not speaking aloud, but inside his thoughts. "They will come for me again," her voice said, calm but certain. "But now, you know why you must help me." Ethan's breath caught. She wasn't just a fugitive. She was the key to something far greater than he had imagined. Asterisk escaped to the city. The crystal's glow dimmed to a faint pulse. Shadows stretching across the ancient chamber. Outside, the metallic footsteps grew. Louder, the steady rhythm of armored boots moving through the jungle. The vine-armored warriors turned toward the sound, gripping their living weapons, staffs that hummed softly with energy. The alien girl tightened her hold on Ethan's hand, her golden eyes sharp with urgency. Without speaking, she pulled him toward a narrow passage at the side of the chamber. Warriors stepped into the clearing, their bodies merging with the jungle shadows. From the trees, the hunters appeared, their dark armor reflecting the faint light. A sharp burst of blue energy crackled through the air, and the first warrior fell, his vine armor smoking. Ethan didn't look back, but he could hear the battle erupt, the clash of energy weapons, the deep hum of the warriors' staffs, and the roar of mechanical hounds unleashed by the hunters. The passage sloped downward, its walls slick with moss. The girl moved quickly, never letting go of his hand. They emerged into a lower part of the jungle where the trees thinned, revealing a faint glow in the distance. It wasn't the natural light of glowing plants. It was sharp, white, artificial. Ethan's chest tightened. That was the city, civilization, safety. Maybe. They pushed through the last curtain of vines, and the jungle suddenly ended. Ahead stretched a massive expanse of open land, dotted with tall metal towers carrying power lines. Beyond them, the city rose like a mountain of light, its glass towers shining under the twin moons. The alien girl stopped, her eyes wide, her lips parted slightly as she stared at the endless lights, the moving vehicles, the strange geometric shapes of buildings. For someone who had lived in the wild beauty of the jungle, this sight must have looked like another world entirely. Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder. "Come on," he said quietly. They began moving toward the city, staying low in the tall grass. But before they had gone far, Ethan's comm device buzzed sharply. He pulled it from his belt and checked the signal. A direct transmission from his team. Static crackled. Then a voice came through, low and urgent. "Ethan, where are you? You need to return immediately. Do you hear me? Bring the girl in, but keep your distance." Ethan frowned. "What's going on?" he whispered. The voice paused before answering. "She's dangerous, Ethan. More dangerous than you can imagine." He glanced at the girl, who was now crouched beside him, watching his device curiously. Dangerous? She didn't look dangerous. Frightened, yes, but not a threat. And yet, he remembered the crystal, the visions, the way she had spoken directly into his mind. There was more to her than he understood. The cum crackled again. "Ethan, if she gets into the city, you could be putting everyone at risk. We're sending a retrieval team." He shut the device off, sliding it back onto his belt. He wasn't going to hand her over, not until he knew the truth. They reached the outskirts of the city, where towering floodlights lit up a security fence. At the nearest gate, a small group of travelers waited to be scanned by automated drones. Ethan pulled the girl's hood, made from strips of jungle fabric, over her head. "Stay close, don't talk," he whispered. She nodded, her eyes darting around at the strange machines and the buzzing of hovering drones. They slipped into the line, trying to blend in. When it was their turn, The scanning drone hovered in front of them, its red lens passing over Ethan first. Human. Identification confirmed. It said in a flat mechanical tone. Then it scanned the girl. The red lens flashed twice, and a sharp alarm rang out. Unregistered lifeform detected. Alerting enforcement units, the drone said. Ethan's pulse spiked without thinking. He grabbed her hand and bolted past the gate. Shoving through the crowd, shouts erupted behind them. And two armed security officers gave chase. They sprinted. Down a narrow alley between tall glass buildings, the sounds of the city thundering around them. The girl struggled to keep up, but her eyes were bright, not with fear, but with wonder. Even while running for her life, she couldn't help. But look at the glowing billboards, the streams of light from hovering vehicles, the endless colors of the market stalls they passed. Ethan pulled her into a side entrance of a clothing shop, the scent of fresh fabric and perfume filling the air. Mannequins in bright dresses stood in the windows. The girl stared at them, tilting her head, her hand brushing over a silky red gown as if it were some kind of treasure. For a second, she forgot about the danger, her lips curling into a small smile. But outside, the heavy thump of boots grew louder. First steps into fashion, the holoscreen above the shop door glowed with the alien girl's image, her golden eyes looking straight into the camera beneath her face. The alien text flashed, the bounty amount so large it could change a person's life. Ethan's stomach twisted. Anyone who saw that would see her not as a person, but as a prize. He glanced at her. She was still touching the silky red dress, running her fingers along the fabric as if it was made of starlight. Her eyes were wide, her lips parted in quiet amazement. She had no idea the entire city was being told to capture her. Ethan knew they couldn't stay here, but he also knew they needed to blend in, and right now, her jungle-wrapped clothing made her stand out like a flare in the dark. The shopkeeper, a tall woman with silver hair tied high, approached slowly, her gaze fixed on the alien girl. Ethan tensed, ready to explain or lie, but instead, the shopkeeper smiled. She has never worn city clothes before, has she? The woman asked softly. Ethan forced a casual smile. First time, the shopkeeper nodded, her eyes never leaving the girl. Then let her try something. The girl didn't understand the words, but she seemed to sense the tone. The shopkeeper led her to a rack of dresses, each glowing faintly under soft lights. The girl hesitated, looking back at Ethan as if asking permission. He nodded. She stepped forward, brushing her hands over a shimmering blue dress, then a soft cream-colored one. Then finally stopping at a deep emerald gown that seemed to make her eyes glow brighter. The shopkeeper gestured toward a fitting room. The girl disappeared behind the curtain, and for the first time since the jungle, Ethan had a moment to breathe. He checked the front window. The street outside was busy, but no security units were in sight yet. Still, the bounty announcement would spread quickly. And the clock was ticking. The curtain rustled, and the girl stepped out. Ethan froze. The emerald dress fit her perfectly, flowing down to her bare feet, the fabric moving like water as she walked. Her silver violet hair framed her glowing skin, and her golden eyes caught the shop's light. For a moment, she looked less like someone running for her life, and more like a queen from another world. She turned slowly, as if unsure of herself, then looked at Ethan for a reaction. He gave a small nod and smiled. It's perfect, she smiled back, and for the briefest moment, the fear between them faded, replaced by something warmer, but the peace didn't last. From the street outside came the faint metallic whir of a scanner drone. Ethan's chest tightened. The sound grew louder, and shadows passed over the shop window. The girl didn't notice. She was still touching the dress, watching the way the fabric caught the light. Ethan stepped closer to her, lowering his voice. "We need to go." She frowned, confused. Then the shop's front door slid open with a soft chime. Two figures in dark armor stepped inside, their helmets scanning the room. They moved slowly, like predators certain their prey had nowhere to run. The shopkeeper stiffened but said nothing. Ethan's mind raced. The hunters didn't know she was here. Not yet, but if they scanned her, the alarm would go off instantly. Thinking quickly, he took a scarf from a display and wrapped it loosely around her head, covering most of her hair and face. "Follow me," he whispered. The shopkeeper's eyes flicked to the back door, and she gave the faintest nod. Ethan guided the girl toward it, keeping his body between her and the hunters. The armor-clad figures paused by the fitting rooms, scanning the air with small handheld devices. A faint red light blinked on one of the scanners. They were close to finding her. The back door slid open, and cold night air rushed in. They stepped into a narrow alley lit only by a single flickering sign. The city noise seemed distant here, but Ethan knew it wouldn't last. He led her quickly through the maze of back streets, passing piles of old machinery and glowing trash bins. Her dress, beautiful as it was far from practical for running, and she stumbled more than once. Still, she kept pace, holding the scarf in place and glancing around with wide, alert eyes. They emerged onto a quieter street lined with neon-lit food stalls. The smells of spices, grilled meat, and sweet fruit filled the air. Vendors called out in different languages, and the girl looked at everything with the same wonder she had in the shop. Ethan realized he was seeing the human world for the first time, and even in danger, she couldn't hide her fascination. They stopped in the shadow of an old archway. Ethan checked the street behind them. No hunters, no drones, but he knew they couldn't keep running forever. The girl touched his arm and pointed toward a stall selling bright, colorful scarves. Ethan frowned, unsure what she meant. She mimed wrapping it around her head, then pointed to herself. He understood. She wanted to disguise herself better. He bought her one, a deep gold fabric that shimmered under the neon lights. She wrapped it around her head, hiding her hair completely. Her eyes peered out from the folds, and she looked almost unrecognizable for the first time. Ethan thought they might have a chance. Trouble finds them. The golden scarf hid her silver-violet hair completely, but Ethan still felt exposed. The street's neon lights painted the walls in shifting colors, and every shadow seemed like a threat. The hollow above them kept playing the same loop. The hunters pushing through the shop they had just escaped. Scanning every corner, it was only a matter of time before they checked the nearby streets. Ethan kept moving, guiding the girl through narrow lanes between crowded market stalls. The smell of fried food and sweet fruit clung to the air, but under it was something sharp, the faint metallic scent of scanning drones. He glanced up and saw one hovering high above, its lens sweeping the streets below. "We need to stay under cover," he muttered. The girl tilted her head, not understanding the words but sensing his urgency. They slipped into a busier part of the market where vendors shouted over one another, selling glowing trinkets, steaming noodles, and fabrics dyed in impossible colors. The crowd was thick, and Ethan hoped it would shield them from aerial scans, but the girl slowed, her eyes catching on a stall filled with glass bottles that glowed from within. The vendor popped one open, releasing a swirl of golden vapor that danced like tiny fireflies. She reached out, fascinated. Ethan pulled her hand gently. "Later," he whispered. The crowd shifted suddenly, and a ripple of unease spread through the market. Ethan looked over his shoulder. Two hunters in dark armor had entered from the far end, their helmets scanning the crowd. One of them raised a small device, and Ethan saw the faint red glow of a tracker. His chest tightened. They were reading heat signatures, and in this sea of people, it wouldn't take long for them to find her unique energy pattern. "Move," he said sharply, tugging her forward. They weaved through the market, ducking under awnings and pushing past people carrying baskets of fruit and mechanical parts. The girl followed without question, but Ethan could see her golden eyes flicking everywhere, not just in fear, but calculating. It was as if she was memorizing every turn, every alley. The hunters picked up speed, their armor reflecting flashes of neon. Ethan took a sharp left into a side alley, hoping to lose them, The alley was narrow, lined with the back doors of restaurants and humming power units. But halfway through, he stopped. A tall chain-link gate blocked the exit. He cursed under his breath. Behind them, the heavy thump of armored boots grew louder. The girl stepped forward, placing her hand on the metal gate. For a second, nothing happened. Then the metal shimmered faintly, and with a sharp crack, the lock snapped open. Ethan stared. She had done that without tools, just her touch. She didn't look at him, simply pulling the gate wide. They slipped through, letting it swing shut behind them. Now they were in a quiet street with no market noise, just the distant hum of the city. Ethan's instincts told him the hunters would keep following. Their tech was too advanced to be stopped by one gate. The girl seemed to sense it too, glancing back before tugging him toward a building with a half-lit sign. Inside, the air was warm and smelled faintly of oil and metal. It was a repair shop filled with parts of old vehicles stacked in high piles. An old man behind the counter looked up. Ethan placed a few credits on the counter and said quietly, "We just need to pass through." The man nodded slowly, his eyes narrowing when he saw the girl. For a tense moment, Ethan thought he might call it in, but instead, the old man pointed toward a back door. They moved quickly, slipping through into a dark maintenance tunnel that ran under the street. The tunnel was damp and echoing, the only light coming from flickering strips on the walls. Ethan slowed, trying to listen for pursuit. The girl touched his arm and then pointed ahead. Far in the distance, he could hear the faint hum of an elevator. If they could reach it, they could come up on the other side of the district, far from the hunters. But just as they neared the elevator, a sharp metallic clang echoed behind them. Ethan spun. A small spider-like drone crawled into view, its red lens locking onto them. Before he could fire, the girl stepped forward, her hand glowing faintly. A pulse of light shot from her palm, hitting the drone. It sparked violently and collapsed, smoke rising from its cracked shell. Ethan stared at her, his voice low. "You can do that?" She looked at him for a long moment, then simply said one word in her own language. Her tone steady, it sounded like a name, or maybe a title. He didn't understand it, but the way she said it made his chest tighten. She wasn't just a fugitive, she was someone important. The elevator doors slid open, and they stepped inside. As it began to rise, the lights flickered. The girl stood close, her scarf casting shadows across her eyes. She didn't look scared, she looked ready. And Ethan realized something chilling. She wasn't running just to survive, she was heading somewhere. Asterisk. The elevator hung in place, the walls humming. Softly, a red light blinked above the door as the mechanical voice repeated, "Override engaged. Please remain still for identification." Ethan's pulse quickened. That meant someone had taken control of the lift from outside, and in this city, there was no doubt who it was. The hunters. The alien girl didn't move, her golden eyes fixed on the light. Her hands were at her sides, but Ethan noticed a faint glow beginning to pulse beneath her scarf. She looked calm, too calm, as if she had expected this. "Listen," Ethan whispered. "If they get in here, I'll distract them, you run." She turned to him slowly, shaking her head. Her voice was soft but steady as she spoke a single sentence in her language. He didn't understand the words, but the meaning in her eyes was clear. "We run together, eh?" Sharp hiss echoed through the small space as the panel above them popped open. Two spider-like drones dropped into the lift, their lenses glowing red. Ethan raised his blaster, firing twice. The first shot hit a drone, sending sparks flying. The second missed as the other darted forward. Before it could strike, the girl stepped between them, her hand glowing bright. A wave of light pulsed out, hitting the drone and making it seize in midair before falling in pieces to the floor. The elevator shuddered and began to move again. But this time it was going down. Ethan gritted his teeth. They were being taken underground, probably to a holding facility where escape would be impossible. As the lift descended, the girl suddenly pressed her palm against the wall. The metal Around her hand began to glow and ripple. Ethan stared. She was rewriting the machine somehow. Bending it to her will, the hum of the elevator changed, and instead of going down, it shot upward with a force that made Ethan's stomach drop. The red light above the door flashed wildly, alarms screaming. Then, with a violent jolt, the lift slammed to a stop, and the doors burst open. They stumbled out onto an open platform high above the city. The night wind hit them instantly, carrying the scent of ozone and rain below. The city stretched out like a sea of lights in the distance. The glowing runway of the spaceport blazed against the dark sky. The girl didn't hesitate. She started running toward the port. Ethan followed, the platform vibrating under their boots. Behind them, the heavy thump of armored boots echoed. The hunters had followed them, their voices barking sharp commands over comms. They reached a narrow bridge that connected the platform to a service road. The wind howled around them, the drop below disappearing into shadows halfway across. A hunter stepped out from the other side, weapon raised. Ethan didn't think. He fired, forcing the hunter to dive for cover. The girl kept moving, her scarf whipping in the wind. By the time they reached the spaceport gates, security alarms were blaring. Dockworkers shouted in confusion as Ethan pulled the girl toward a small cargo ship. It wasn't his, but he didn't care if it had engines. It would do. He hacked the control panel, forcing the hatch open. The girl slipped inside, moving straight to the cockpit as if she already knew what to do. The hunters poured into the port, weapons drawn. A shot grazed the hull, sending sparks into the air. Ethan jumped into the pilot's seat, but before he could touch the controls, the girl placed her hands on the console. The entire ship hummed to life instantly, the controls lighting up without a single button pressed. She looked at him and said something in her language, 2 words this time. Then she pushed the throttle forward, and the ship lifted smoothly into the air. The spaceport shrank below them, the hunters' shots fading into silence. The girl removed her scarf, letting her silver-violet hair flow freely in the wind of the cabin's vent system. Her golden eyes glowed brighter than ever as she gazed at the stars ahead. Ethan finally asked the question that had been burning in his mind since the jungle. "Who are you?" She looked at him for a long moment, then reached out and touched his hand. In his mind, her voice spoke clearly. "I am the last of my kind, and I am not just running. I am returning." Before he could respond, the ship's nav system lit up with a new course, a planet he had never heard of. Its name shimmered on the screen in strange alien symbols. She leaned back in her seat, her expression calm but unyielding. Ethan knew then that his journey with her was only beginning.